Okay, so I'm recording this part where we're trying to enter the temperatures for Death Valley and how you go about doing that. So I've put in some preliminary code here. I created this scanner thing. This is how we're going to get our input from the input stream. And then also pre-assign this variable, the month with the highest temperature. I'm going to default it to 1. That's January. And then if there's any temperature that goes above January's temperature, then we'll just replace this variable. That way we won't have to store every temperature. We can just store the highest one because that's the only one we care about. Another thing I did to kind of get this set up is attached to the assignment. Canvas is not working for us right now, but attached to the assignment, there's a date class that I put out, and I'd like you to pull in that in here because we want to use one method from this date class. It's a static method, so we don't actually have to create a date object. But this method right here, two month string. But note that it's incomplete. It only has January and February, and clearly, probably in Death Valley, January and February aren't the hottest months in there. But let's just try it and see what happens. We're going to use this method. That's the only method we're going to use in the date class. So what would I do? I would say system.out.println. And this is the prompt to the user. We're asking him, please enter the temperature, or the high temperature, I guess. And then here is where we'd use our date class to translate the current month number into the month string. So I would say plus, remember that's the concatenation operator that adds stuff to the end of the string. And then you would say date, since it's a static method. And notice it gives you lots of dates out there. We have our own date class. We're not going to use any of these. So we say date dot. And here we say 2 months string. We're trying to take the number and convert it to a string. So we use that one. And then here we'll use, instead of month num, we'll use I. All right, and then a semicolon. So I'm just going to run this time. It's not going to do anything other than to ask them what the temperature is for each month. But it's not going to wait. It's not going to wait for a response. But I want to run it just to see if I logically this seems to, it should, I'm expecting it will list all the months all the way to the end of December. First of all, it doesn't know what a scanner is, right? What's the problem there? Anybody know? Do I have Java 2 in here? Anybody in Java 2? Yeah. So what do you think? Yeah, we got to import the scanner. You can't use something from the library without importing the package that the library function resides in. So you have to do that first. So import Java. I forget where this is. Is it util where the scanner is located? Yeah, I guess so. So compiling again now. Hopefully that the compiler will be able to find it. Yeah, and see how it does fine with January and February, but then when it gets to March, it says, well, 3 is an invalid month number, and clearly 3 is not an invalid month number, right? 13 is invalid, I would say, but all these other ones should be valid. So what that's telling me is our date class is missing some values. See how I put it? Yeah, Bill.
Yeah, we haven't entered in the case 3 through 12 yet.
Yeah, so you're right. So we got to put 3 through 12, but luckily I put in a default case. Now, typically when you create a switch statement, I always put a default case in so that it catches those things that don't make sense. Like say the month number is 13. You want to tell the user somehow, hey, this makes no sense at all. You don't want to mess up your data. We need to stop this program. We don't know how to do perhaps exceptions yet, but At least we can tell the user something's not right. So here, what I would do is I would take this bunch of code and then just copy it. We've already learned about the switch statement back in Java 1, but just to refresh your memory, switch statement allows you to, when you have multi-way branching, you have, instead of just two ways like an if statement, you want to go lots of different ways like a train yard. You can use a switch statement to do that. You say, well, what are you switching on? Well, we're going to look at the month number, and then in the case where the month number is a 3, we're not going to say February, we're going to say March. And then so on and so on. So let's just assume our high temperature is in these first 3 days. I'm going to go back here just so I don't mess things up, and I'm going to say less than or equal to 3. So what's the high temperature in January, February, March? Just those 3 months. If I run it now, it's going to just do it 3 times instead of 12 times. Now, I do want you to do it 12 times, but here, that's great. We've got it 3 times, but we didn't give the user an opportunity to put in what the temperature was for that month. We've got the prompts working, but we don't have the rest of it working yet. So this is where we need to get something from the scanner. That's why we created the scanner. So we say, well, we're missing a variable. Not only do we need to store the month that has the highest temperature, we need to store the highest temperature. So let's also include that. So the month with the highest temperature should be an integer, because months, there's no fractional months. You see the first or the second and third month. So we're going to make that an int. And then here, we'll just say, we'll call this one high temp. And we'll set it equal to something that's not a very high temperature. We could just say 0 if we'd like. I'm assuming these are in Fahrenheit, but it might be in Celsius. I don't know. Does it matter? I guess it doesn't, because we're just looking for the high one. It could be Celsius or Fahrenheit, whatever's the highest one. So then what we do is we check to see, well, we have to read in we'll create another variable called temp, or we could just say current temp. Right. And then we're going to read in from the user what the current temperature is for that month. So you would say current temp equals, well, input, which is our scanner, dot next. It's very strange in here in Replit land, because every once in a while you hit the dot and it gives you a nice list, but here it doesn't. And I don't understand what the difference is, why it does it sometimes and not other times. Well, what do we want? The next double, next integer, next get you the next string. I think we want the next double, right? Because the user is going to be typing in like 17.2, let's say. So we would say next double. And we'll go out to the input stream and it will put the cursor there and wait for the user to put in a value. So we don't get the prompts over and over again. Here, this is where the user gets an opportunity to store something. And then we can say if the current temp is greater than the high temp, well, then that's going to be our new high temperature. So what we want to do is store 2 things. We want to reset the high temperature to this temperature. So we would say high temp equals current temp, because that's the new high temperature. Because it's greater than the current high temp. So, and then we have to also keep track of what month this is. So this is a month, the month with the highest temp. And we set that equal to I. Remember, I represents which month we're on. So it will go through all the months. Here we only have 3, but regularly you'd have 12. And you will have captured the highest temperature and which month had the highest temperature. And now all we have to do after the loop is print out what we found. So here's the bottom of the for loop. And here you might say system.out.println. The month with the highest temp is. Notice we don't print out the highest temperature. We're just printing out the month that has the highest temperature in it. So we would say plus. And then we'll just do the same thing we did here. We'll use our date class to translate that month number into a string. But instead of I, we would say we want to use month highest temp, the month with the highest temperature. Semicolon. Let's try it and see if it compiles first. So usually when I write code, like a bunch of code, first time I run it, there's always a syntax error, but I didn't get one that time. I got lucky. It still doesn't mean it's any good yet. You could still have a runtime error. Maybe your code is faulty. Well, let's say January has a high temp of 40 degrees. February, the high temp is 50 degrees. March, it goes way up, 72 degrees. It gets hot. So our expectation is March is going to have our highest temperature. Let's see. Yeah, it does. Okay. If we run this again, and we want to, maybe we make January. I know that's not typical, but say we put 100 degrees for some reason in January, 30 degrees in February, and 99.6 degrees in March. The expectation is we're going to get January. We do. So you want to try a lot of different cases, test cases, to see if it does get the right month. Now, the one that's kind of weird is January. We have January set up as the default to be the highest temperature month, right? We've done March, we've done January. Then you might want to try February just to see if that works for this program. But then yours is going to have to include all the other months as well. So here you're seeing the power of loops. We didn't have to write this question out multiple times. We were also able to use the date class to translate our month string. So we didn't have to create a separate font or separate prompt for each month. By using the date class, we had to figure out the name of the month. Remember, computers only work with numbers, typically internally. Everything's a number. But this is a good algorithm for figuring out the high or low of something. You create a loop, set a default, and then loop through all the items. If any of them is higher than the previous one of the previous ones, just switch it out. And then at the end, you'll have the highest or the lowest, depending on what you're saying. If we want the lowest temp, what do we check? Or what would we change? Change that to less than. Ta-da! Now it's the lowest number. We change one thing. So this is a common algorithm. It's like, what's the biggest check I wrote at my bank the last 3 months? You know, you could create a program like this that would tell you. You go through all your transactions. Say you have 1,000 transactions. Go through each transaction, see which one was the largest, tell you when, what date that was on, and now you can go find it. It's cool stuff. So that's how I would approach this this temperature conversion. What I would do is I would change this now back to 12, and then I would fill in the date class, adding the additional cases for each of the other months. Be careful not to leave break out. Break is important because it stops it from falling into the next case. A lot of people do that. They forget to put the break in, and then 2 flows into 3, and 3 flows into 4, and then everything is 12. So make sure to put a break at the end of every case. You typically don't want it to do that, flow from one case into another. It's very, very rare that you want that behavior. So don't forget to put the break there. All right, that's all I had for Java 2. So if you're in Java 2 and you wanted to check out, you're welcome to. Philip, if you want to stick around for questions, we can do that as well. Yeah, question.
I think I'll just wait until Thursday when we're in class.
Okay, that's fine.
But this did help.
Okay, cool. So Jacob's asking, why do we need a break in the default case? That's stupid, right? Well, he didn't say that. I'm saying that. But it seems silly to have a break on the default case. And I always put one. And the question is why? It's the last one. So obviously that's not going to flow into the next one because there is no next one. But check this out. Say later on, I say this. I say, hopefully I'll put my money where my mouth is. Say maybe a programmer that's not as meticulous as Jacob, say decides to put April here instead of before the default case. I always thought that the default case has to be the last one, but in actuality, it doesn't. If we run this now, here's January, February, March, April, and all the other months are invalid. Month with the highest temperature is invalid month number. Notice I could put the case 4 in there, and it didn't seem to mind that the default case wasn't the last one. So in order to avoid a future bug, this is called defensive programming. I'm always coding defensively. I'm saying, oh, wow, a programmer might come in later when they're maintaining this code and say, I don't know, President Biden says, now we have a new month 13. And so they add 13 to this list. After the default case, and you forgot to put the break there, now you have a bug in your code. So it seems silly, right, at first glance, but since default isn't required to be the last one, then just to be safe, I include it. So that's kind of what I do. I'm always programming defensively because the things that really cost you the most money out in the field are bugs like this that creep in when you make slight changes. A bug will bite you. So that's basically a defensive coding technique. All right, good question. Wow, I didn't think we'd get to those heady questions already. That's really good. Any other questions from people in class? All right, so yeah, you can log out if you'd like. Thank you everyone for showing up today. And Java 2, work on this assignment and any previous ones before that, and we'll get some questions answered on Thursday. I do believe we do have advisory tomorrow, so there's some stuff they're going to talk about, year-end kind of stuff. Do we have any juniors in here? Any juniors in the class? No? There's mock interviews coming up as well, so you have to get your resume done if you're a junior. All right, I'm stopping the meeting. See ya.